as the agent attorney, in fact, doesn't have the key. The key to the safe deposit has been lost. So in order to access the safe deposit box, they need to drill it. What does the bank say? The bank says, power of attorney doesn't say you have authority to drill the box. You can't get in it. I'm thinking, it's just crazy. So I call the bank, and guess what? I lose that argument. So I go back, and my power of attorney is a work in progress, and I'm constantly changing it. So I go back and I add a sentence that says, it may access the safe deposit box, and if necessary, may drill the safe deposit box. So I think I've got the situation solved. Another client gets my new power of attorney, goes down to the bank, opens the safe deposit box, no problem. I think they have the key. And in the box, there's a bunch of important papers and maybe some other little trinkets, jewelry items. And they're going to take the items and go. The bank says, no, can't do that. Power of attorney doesn't say you can remove the contents of the safe deposit box. Okay, again, sounds crazy to me. Call the bank, I lose that argument. Go back and add to my power of attorney form paragraph that now says they have authority to remove the contents of the safe deposit box. So it started off as a simple one sentence saying the person has access, now is a whole paragraph of everything they can do with respect to that safe deposit box. Another alternative to conservatorship to consider is if the person with the traumatic brain injury only has income, no other assets, but basically just income, Social Security, pension, or VA benefits. A possible alternative would be to have somebody become the representative payee of those benefits and manage those benefits as the representative payee. Another alternative would be the existence of a trust. There may be a situation where the person with the traumatic brain injury has executed as part of his or her estate plan a revocable living trust. If all the assets of that person are in the trust, this might be an appropriate alternative. The question always comes up is who's going to provide oversight to that trustee who's managing the trust assets. If the trustee is going to give reports every year to the person with the brain injury, and that person with the brain injury is not able to provide adequate oversight or understand what that report is providing, there's going to be a problem. So I think it's important that if there's a trust document in place, that the trust include a provision, whether it's added by amendment or whatever, that appoints what is called either a trust advisor or a special representative who will be looking out for the individual's best interest in the administration of that trust, and will be an oversight, will provide oversight for the trustee's actions. Yes.
Brain injury survivor could get on.
Yeah, I understand the question. So the question is, can if the person becomes a representative payee, can it be only as to a certain amount of that benefit? And I think the answer is no. The way that would work is, if you become the representative payee of, let's say, Social Security, that's through the Social Security Administration, and then you're going to direct that benefit go into a separate account, your representative payee's account. Out of that account, you can make allocation of money to the brain injured person if you want. But I don't think you can have Social Security issue a check to the representative payee for like a half, and the other half go to the beneficiary. I don't think they're going to let you do that. In some cases where there's third-party liability that David was discussing, there's a recovery of that on that third-party liability. This decision may be made to establish and fund what is called a special needs trust, and usually that is done when the person is going to become eligible for Medicaid. They have a resource limit. By putting the monies recovered from the third-party claim into the special needs trust will preserve their eligibility for Medicaid. It used to be that the special needs trust could only be set up by certain people. It excluded the trust being set up by the impaired person. I think the law's been changed to allow now the impaired person to set up that special needs trust, but we often set up a conservatorship for the purpose of not only pursuing the third-party claim, but also for setting up and funding the special needs trust. And then you have the option of whether to continue the conservatorship or to close the conservatorship. I prefer to continue the conservatorship because I think it provides a format for the trustee of the trust to do their annual accountings as part of the conservatorship accounting to the court. And it just seems a far better way to provide transparency. The other thing you need to know that if there's a third-party claim, a third-party liability, and a claim is pursued, and it's being pursued by a conservator, any settlement of that claim needs to be approved by the court. So, going through this analysis, if there's evidence that supports the appointment of a guardian conservator and less restrictive alternatives have been considered and rejected, then the next question that comes up in my practice is, who should be appointed guardian and conservator? I think you want to look to see if the person with the brain injury has the ability to voice his or her preference. I think the court's going to give strong preference to any selection of a guardian conservator made by the individual for whom you're seeking guardianship conservatorship. If the person doesn't have the ability to state his or her preference, then I think the next choice, the next level will drop down to is family. I think family should always have preference in the appointment of guardianship or conservatorship. If for some reason a family member is not willing to step up or they're not suitable to step up to that position, then there's a whole industry that has developed out there of professional fiduciaries, people that do this type of thing for a living. And they fill a void that's out there if there's nobody else to serve. They charge an hourly rate. The hourly rates that I see to do that kind of work range anywhere from $95 an hour up to $115 an hour. So, if we fast forward, we've gone through the procedure, we've gotten a guardian conservator appointed. The next question that I deal with in my practice is, how can we tailor the conservatorship to provide the individual with as much independence as is suitable and appropriate, commensurate with the person's capacity? Oftentimes, the person with the brain injury is able to manage amount of money. The conservator will go in and set up a checking account, and will fund that checking account for the protected person with a small amount of cash every month that they can use for their spending allowance or whatever. Another option, and something that seems to be catching fire, is the use of what's called a TrueLink card. And that's like a debit card that the conservator can fund with a dollar amount each month. And if it saves all the hassle of writing checks and keeping a checking account. But the nice thing about the TrueLink card is that it enables the conservator to say, okay, I don't want certain things, I don't want to allow the protected person to be able to buy certain things with this card, like alcohol or somewhat whatever. Alcohol seems to be the one that it becomes important sometimes. And so if the person tries to use the TrueLink to buy alcohol, it'll be rejected. And the conservator can actually go online and see what activities are occurring and what attempts have been made to use the TrueLink card to buy something that maybe is inappropriate or shouldn't be purchased. Another, not necessarily alternative to conservatorship, but another thing to be aware of is what is called ABLE accounts. ABLE is an acronym for achieving a better life experience. I don't know how many people here know or are familiar with ABLE accounts. But ABLE account may be opened by a disabled person, family, friend, or an agent. The requirement is that the disability must have occurred before the person attained the age of 26 years. The contribution to the ABLE account is limited to $15,000 a year. The total amount that can be in the account at any time cannot exceed $100,000. The disabled person is the account owner, and signers on the account can be the disabled person, an agent, guardian, and conservator. And the distributions from the account must be for the benefit of the disabled person. The nice thing about the ABLE account is that it does not disqualify the disabled person from need-based benefits. So if they're on Medicaid, there's a $2,000 resource limit to be eligible for Medicaid. The funds that are in the ABLE account do not count as a resource. And there are no restrictions on the use of the funds for food and shelter expenses. So if you have a special needs trust, you're on Medicaid, you cannot use funds of the special needs trust for food and shelter. If you have an ABLE account set up and you transfer funds from the special needs trust to the ABLE account, those funds in the ABLE account can be used for food and shelter expenses without disqualifying the person for Medicaid benefits. A couple other things that I note that are being done by conservators almost on a routine basis is a credit. Yes.
This money from the ABLE account will impact need-based resources, but when you fill out annual certification for need-based programs, they always ask about what resources you have or who has, who pays what for you each month. Like, for example, I pay $50 in like haircuts and clothes and stuff for myself each month. So the people who are like say Section 8, they always consider that as part of a financial resource available to the individual, even though I've got it in trust. So
Yeah.
how do you lie and say there isn't?
No, refer to it as an ABLE account. And the ABLE account should be an exempt resource. It should not be counted as a resource for needs-based benefits.
And is that acronym ABLE?
ABLE. If you Google it, you'll get into a website that's set up that tells you about the program in Oregon, and and it should be an exempt resource. Yes.
So I've dealt with both ABLE and special needs trusts on HUD, and I had both excluded. They did try to include it at first, and I had to push the envelope with it. And when I told them it was a special needs trust, they backed off. So they have to advocate for it, but they will not count it.
Yeah, it's like, I think it's been around for probably about 4 years now, 2 or 3 years, maybe 4 years. So it's relatively new. So it's a matter of educating those people that you're accountable to. So the other thing I was going to mention is the freeze credit. A lot of conservators now are, when they get appointed, are freezing the individual's credit. That's important if you have situations where there's been an abuse of credit or there's been multiple credit cards that have been obtained. By freezing the credit, you can put a stop to that. And the last thing to conclude my remarks today would be seeking supplemental security income. That's important if it's appropriate. I don't specialize in Social Security benefits, but the SSI benefits are important for reasons that if you participate in that program, after you turn 18, you can, for a certain period of time, you can become eligible for Medicare benefits. And so a lot of people sometimes drop or don't pursue the SSI benefit. It's important that you do that if it's applicable.
How hard is that to do with a brain injury? How hard is it to prove the Social Security?
Well, you have a couple of things. You have Social Security disability. Again, you have to meet the Social Security disability standard.
Is that different than what you just said?
Yeah, the SSI, you're going to have that as well, but it's going to bring, it can bring the income up to the level, I think it's $750. the benefit, the SSI benefit.
You can have one or the other? Or you have to have?
I think I don't think you can have both. I think the dollar, it's going to be based on the dollar amount, the higher of the two. But one carries with it, you're going to get the Medicare eligibility after a 2-year period if you do the SSI. You're not going to do the SSI for a minor child with a disability because the parent's income is going to be imputed to them. But once they turn 18, it's probably important for them to look into the SSI. I did. Did you hear that? I did.
Can I request if you can rephrase the question so that I can get recorded?
I didn't hear the question.
It was just a statement about Social Security disability income and you reach normal retirement age, you will continue to get that benefit. So if you're making more than what a regular Social Security retirement, that will just roll over. So if you get $2,000 a month, then the rest is PI. That will continue throughout your retirement.
Did everybody hear that?
Could you repeat it? Yeah.
I think the comment was that if the Social Security disability is going to roll over when you reach normal retirement age. Is that correct? Yes.
Have you ever come across a case where there was a delayed diagnosis, say, and the person may have been working part-time at a point back a few years ago when the neuropsych or another doctor says, yes, you were actually being impaired by a brain injury, but you weren't being given any SSI to bump you up to the normal Social Security disability, like if you were working part-time. Can you go back, or is it sort of like a statute of limitations that we're talking about later, and it only goes back a couple of years, whatever number?
I don't know the answer to that. Social Security is a specialty that lawyers specialize in, and I'm not a Social Security attorney. It's like workers' comp. It has its own field of attorneys that specialize in those areas. So I wouldn't know. Any other questions? If not, I think that concludes my presentation.
This is Maggie.
Yeah.
I have one more question. I had a situation as a case manager. I was asked by a doctor, the gentleman that had a brain injury. My job for the first year was to try to keep him out of prison because he was being taken advantage of by friends who were spending his money, actually getting in legal trouble with drugs that he wasn't involved with, but he could flee because of his injury. They could, so it was blamed on him. And so you were talking about that account limit access to the money. Is that something that could have been used to protect his finances? Because he did have a certain amount of money each month to spend. But boy, we had quite a challenge with those two fronts, with financial impact of money being taken from him by friends, as well as him being blamed for drug transactions that supposedly happened on the premises and he had nothing to do with it, but got blamed. He got
I'm not sure that a TrueLink card would solve that problem unless you're able to toggle on so that it cannot be used for cash advances. I don't know if that's one of the choices, but if you can do that, that would prevent cash advances. I don't think the ABLE account, if somebody wanted to abuse that, I'm not sure there's anything you do to protect against that unless you keep the person off the account and just have the agent on the account, which may be a solution. But if there was a conservatorship in place, which it doesn't sound like there was, the conservatorship would take full control of those assets. And if there was abuse occurring with either the TrueLink card or the ABLE account, they could shut that down and go back to a different system or put in safeguards to prevent that from happening. You know, people that are taking advantage of other people, are getting pretty crafty in their ways and means of doing that. As far as, they would have the person that's being protected go to the store and buy a bunch of clothes, and the next day those clothes are returned to get the cash. It's a way around the, avoiding the cash advance. So they're getting creative. It's tough to keep up with them.
Can we get the speakerphone?
Sorry, this was something somebody mentioned before you were up there, but somebody before you was mentioning an organization called Seabird. What's that?
Seabird.
What does it stand for? What is it?
It's Center for Brain Injury Research and Training.
No further questions? Brian, nothing?
One question.
Yeah.
So, like you say, it is very common, and with so many people with brain injuries about their budget and their money and how they're spent and how people take advantage of it. So one of the things that I have seen with my son and with other people with brain injuries that I have helped, that a lot of visas, card holders take advantage, like, they send them and they get like into big, huge debt. And there is a number where people can call to complain or challenge that of them taking advantage of people with brain injury.
With the credit cards that get in the mail?
It's like the banks. Like I have, like, for example, in RW, I had a person that I helped out, this lady. She doesn't speak English, brain injury, and then even the bank that we went to talk that she has a brain injury, but they really just, like, they cheated her so wrong with the money and with the credit card.
Yeah, with the credit cards, I think the freezing the credit would work. And what you would do is you contact one of the credit bureaus. There's like 3 major credit bureaus, Equifax, I forget the other 2. If you go online, if you Google in freeze credit, they'll pop up and they'll tell you how to go through and freeze the credit. That'll prevent, getting the credit cards in the mail and, activating them and then having, 20 credit cards where they've activated for $5,000 and everybody's gone the limit on them. So freezing the credit is the way I know. The other thing is, if that happens, and if there's a conservatorship in place, there's the ability to petition the court and ask that the protected person's limited funds be given priority for their care needs and the administration expenses of the guardianship and conservatorship over all other creditors. Okay? And we've got situations where individuals, and not necessarily brain injury people, but people with dementia, Alzheimer's, have run up tens of thousands of dollars in debt, and we start getting notices from collection agencies. And what we've done is we've gone to court and said, look, this person has limited assets, they're likely to outlive those limited assets, and there's a statute that says that the court can give priority to those limited assets for the person's living expenses and needs to the exclusion of the credit card debt. Okay? And there's actually a case out there that supports that. If the legislature has decided that it's more important for the person's living expenses to be paid to the exclusion of the credit card debt. And so what happens is my client will start getting those notices from the collection agencies. I will then draft a letter to the collection agency that says, I represent the conservator. Here's a copy of the order that was entered by the court. We now have priority over your debt. And so far, on every case I've done, those credit card companies have gone away. Now, that's not to say if the protected person dies that they don't have a claim against the probate estate of that person. It just says while the person's alive, they have no right to collect. And I think if they were to undertake collection efforts, it would be an unlawful debt collection practice. That if you mention those words, they kind of cower and they don't want that. So that's something that I've done that's been effective and works. Yes?
He's applauding.
Oh, okay. watching. Thank you very much.